Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video we're going to learn the 2 to 5 player game Risk, designed by Albert Lamris and Michael I. Levin, and published by Hasbro. In this classic game, you control an army set on conquering your enemies as you move across the globe. Now, there are several versions of Risk that have been published over the years, and here I have the current regular version available at the time of this recording, which includes the classic rules, as well as 2 versions known as Secret Mission and Capital, and special rules if you have just 2 players. In this video, I'm going to teach you the classic rules, and then give you a quick summary of the other formats in case you're curious about them. But for now, join me at the table, and let's learn how to play. To set up, place the game board in the middle of the play area, putting the included dice nearby. In this video, we'll assume we have 4 players, and now each person picks one of the possible player colors, collecting the related pieces for that army. These will be made up of 40 infantry, 12 cavalry, and 8 artillery. I'm organizing mine into some trays that I have, and if you'd like some of your own, you'll find links in the description of this video. Each person will now collect a certain number of their infantry pieces based on this table found in the rulebook. In our 4-player game, each person collects 30 infantry, and that just means we separate that amount from the other pieces in our army, because now we will place just these onto the board. But before we do, let's take a quick tour of the board. The board is a map of the world divided into 6 colored continents. And each of these are filled with labeled spaces known as territories. So anytime I refer to spaces in this video, I'm referring to the various and different territories. Each player now rolls one of the dice, and the person who rolled the highest, re-rolling any ties among the highest rolling players, will begin by putting one of their infantry pieces onto any empty territory space of the board. That space has now been claimed by that player. It's said to be under their control, and after they're done, the next player in clockwise order will put one of their infantry into any one other empty remaining space. And players will keep doing this, going around and around the table, adding one piece at a time, until eventually all the spaces have been claimed, which might look like this once you're done. Each player will still have some infantry pieces left over from the ones they had originally grabbed from these totals. So continue going around the table from where you left off, taking turns adding 1 infantry into any space of the board you had already claimed. And there's no limit to how many pieces can be in any one space. Just make sure not to add any infantry to the board, except for the ones that you had collected following this table. And when you're done, and I'll finish placing the rest of these in a moment, you should still have some left over in your personal supply. Now find the cards and remove any with this back. These are only used in the Secret Mission variant for Risk, so we can return them to the box. The rest are known as the territory cards. These you'll shuffle and then place in a face-down pile beside the board. And that's the setup. In Risk, the goal of the game is to eliminate your opponents by capturing all 42 territories of the board, making you the new global ruler. The game is played over a series of turns, starting with the person who placed the first infantry piece and then going clockwise around and around the table. And on your turn, you'll perform 3 steps, starting with receiving and placing new troops. Here, you count the number of territories you currently have your pieces in and divide that total by 3, ignoring any fractions. For example, as the blue player, I have pieces in 11 different territories, and 11 divided by 3 is 3.7, but we would just call it 3. That value is how many troops I now collect from my supply, and I place these new pieces into spaces I already have pieces in, however I like. And if you ever run out of your own colored pieces, just use one from a color that's not being used, or find a suitable replacement. Also, as I mentioned earlier, you have 3 types of pieces: infantry, cavalry, and artillery. An infantry piece is worth 1 troop. Cavalry is worth 5, and artillery is worth 10 troops. At any time in the game, you can exchange pieces you have on the board for other pieces of equal value. For example, if I was running out of infantry pieces, I could return 5 of these back to my personal supply and replace them with 1 cavalry piece. Or you could replace 2 cavalry with 1 artillery, or 1 cavalry with 5 infantry, and so on. You get the idea, right? Okay. So at the start of your turn, you gain new infantry by dividing the number of spaces you have pieces in by 3 and taking that number of troops, not counting any fractions. But that's not all. If at the start of your turn you occupy all the spaces of a continent, check the value shown here by that continent's name on the board. You now also gain that number of troops as well. So if I controlled North America, it would look something like this, and I would then collect 5 additional troops. And I would gain those 5 additional troops at the beginning of every turn as long as I controlled North America. And again, you place any new troops as you like among spaces you already have pieces in. With that done, the next step of your turn is attacking. But this is optional. You can choose not to attack if you don't want to, but we'll assume that you do. You can attack multiple times during your turn, but each attack must be resolved one at a time. To begin an attack, pick any one space that has at least 2 of your own troops that is adjacent to a space containing another player's troops. And spaces are adjacent if they share a border or are connected by a dashed line known as a sea line. For example, my troops here in this North Africa space are adjacent to Egypt, East Africa, and Central Africa, as well as Brazil and Western and Eastern Europe because of these connecting sea lines. Also notice that Alaska has a sea line going from it off the side of the board that then appears on the other side, connecting it to Kamchatka. Once you have a target, for example, in this case, I'm going to have North Africa attack Brazil. You then determine how many of your troops from the attacking space you want to commit by pushing them into the target's territory. The target is also known as the defender. At most, you can commit 3 troops to the attack, no matter how many you have in the attacking space. So I can send 1, 2, or 3 troops over. The important thing is that no matter how many troops you want to send into battle, you must always leave at least 1 behind to stand guard. In other words, you cannot leave the space you're attacking from empty. In this case, I've committed 3. Now the defender, the yellow player in this case, will choose to defend with either 1 or 2 of their troops there. No matter how many troops the defender has in the space, they must commit exactly 1 or 2 to the defense. They can't commit 0, and they can't commit more than 2. And unlike the attacker, they can commit even their last troop to that defense. None need to be left behind on guard. To show which pieces are defending, it can help to push them closer to the attacker's pieces. So our defender here will commit 2 to the defense. With the pieces committed, the attacker now rolls 1 red die for each attacking troop. In our example, we had 3 attackers, so they'll roll 3 dice. And at the same time, the defender rolls 1 blue die for each defending troop. They committed 2, so they'll roll 2 blue dice. Now you compare the results, pairing the highest values rolled by each player against each other. For every pair where the attacker has the higher value, like we see here, the defender loses 1 troop from the territory under attack, returning it to their personal supply. And for every pair where the defense roll is equal to or higher than the attacker's die roll, like this, the attacker loses a troop from those they committed to the attack. Any dice that aren't paired with an opponent's die are just ignored. When you're done, if the defender has 1 or more troops still in the territory after the attack, the attacking troops return to the space they attacked from. So back to North Africa, these go. For the sake of example, let's say that there had been fewer troops here in Brazil to begin with, and I brought some pieces over, we rolled the dice, and I removed all of my opponent's pieces from that territory. In that case, I'm said to have captured that territory. It's now under my control, and I must keep all of the attacking troops that survived the battle in that space. But I can now also choose to move more troops from the attacking territory into the newly captured one if I like, but I must leave at least 1 troop behind. Whether your attack resulted in you capturing a territory or not, after your attack, you can attack again, either targeting the same space or a brand new one. And you can keep attacking like this as many times as you like, even going back and forth between spaces you already attacked this turn. You can also stop attacking anytime you like, or you may be forced to if you have no more spaces with at least 2 of your own troops that are adjacent to an enemy's space. Either way, once your attacking is over, if you did capture at least 1 territory during the attacks, you now get to draw a territory card from the top of the deck. But you only draw 1 even if you captured several territories during those attacks. Most territory cards will show a territory and one of 3 types of troop symbols. When gaining these, you're trying to collect a set of 3 cards in one of the following combinations. Either a set containing one of each type of troop, like we see here, or a set of 3 of the same type of troop, like this. You may also have some of these wild cards as well, and these can count as any one of the types of troops you want for completing sets. So we could have used this within this set to count as a cavalry card. Once you have a set, no matter which type it is, at the beginning of any of your future turns, you may turn a complete set in, if you want to gain new troops. Each card you trade in as part of a set will give you 2 bonus troops to add to the location showing on the card if it's a territory you currently control. So if I was trading in these and I controlled both Eastern Canada and North Africa, I would be able to put 2 troops into each of those spaces. Whether any of the cards match the space or not, the first player to trade in a set slides the cards they used under the board like this by the 4 on this edge. Then they collect 4 troops to add to the board along with any other troops they're owed at the start of their turn. And those troops are added following the same rules we discussed earlier. They must go into any combination of spaces where you already have pieces. The next player to trade in a set, whether it's you or someone else, will slide it under the board by the next number and then gain those related number of troops. In this case, 6. And as future sets are traded in, add them under the board and collect the new amount showing. After the 6th set has been traded in, all future troop set gains go up by 5 more than the previous one. This board actually has 2 tracks you can place sets by, but once you pick one of the tracks, just stay on that track for the rest of the game and ignore the other one. I should also mention, once you get to the end of the track, from that point on, any future sets traded are worth 5 more points than the last traded in set. So just keep track of that on a piece of paper if necessary. Also, if you ever run out of cards in the territory deck when you would need to draw more, just shuffle all the used sets into a new deck and keep drawing as required. Now, just because you have a set doesn't mean you must trade it in at the start of your turn. You can hang on to it for a future turn. But if you ever start your turn with 5 or 6 cards, you must trade in at least 1 set. But you may trade in a second if you have it. So just to recap, at the start of your turn, you can choose to trade in sets that you have to gain new troops. You also always gain new troops based on the number of territories and continents you control. And then you can attack in any number of spaces 1 battle at a time, as long as the space you're attacking from has at least 2 of your troops and is adjacent to an opponent. Once you're done attacking, if you manage to gain control of at least 1 territory during your attacks, you get to draw a single territory card. That leaves just one last step to complete a turn, maneuvering. And you can do this whether you attacked on your turn or not. To maneuver, take as many troops as you like from one and only one of your territories, leaving at least one of them behind, and then move them to one other territory you control, as long as the destination space is connected to the space the troops came from by other spaces you control that are adjacent to each other, including through sea lines. So Blue was able to move these 3 troops from here to here because the spaces connecting them were also controlled by Blue. And keep in mind, any troops you do move must all end up in the same final spot together. After you're done your maneuver, if you choose to do one, your turn is then over. And then the next player takes their turn. Now, while taking turns, the ultimate objective is to eliminate the other players. So let's see how that works. If, after resolving an attack, you've removed the last piece a player has remaining on the board, they've been eliminated. The eliminated player must now give you any territory cards they were holding. If that means you now have 6 or more total cards in hand, you must immediately stop and trade in sets following the usual rules until you have 4 or fewer cards. At that point, you can stop trading in sets if you want to. This is the only situation where you can trade in sets in the middle of your turn. Normally, as we know, you can only do this at the start of your turn. The eliminated player is now out of the game, and the rest of the players continue playing until eventually only one person remains, who will then control all 42 of the territories and be declared the winner. And that's how you play the classic version of Risk. But most standard versions of the game now come with other modes of play. In the rulebook, you'll find a secret mission version of Risk, where each player is given a random secret mission at the beginning of the game from this deck of cards, and aside from a few changes to the setup, the game is played exactly the same as the classic version, except that the winner is the first player who completes their secret mission. Once this happens, they reveal it and claim the victory. You'll also find special rules for two-player games of Risk, and a version known as Capital Risk, which allows for a faster mode of play. But the rules for these other modes of play I'll leave for you to discover on your own. Otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play Risk. If you have any questions at all about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.